afternoon, everyone. First of all, on behalf of Polymed, let me thank all of you for taking out time for today's webinar. My name is Dr. Arijit Guha. I'm the medical lead for Polymed. So today we are going to discuss on pre-transfusion compatibility testing because cross-match is not enough. And so as we move ahead in the discussion, so would like to introduce the moderator for today. Dr. Prashant Pandey is the additional director and head of transfusion medicine and transplant immunology at JP Hospital. He has been serving there for the last 7 years. Prior to JP Hospital, he was serving at Medanta, the Medicity in Gurgaon as a consultant for the last 4 years. And before that at Global Hospitals Bangalore as a consultant and in charge for 2 years. And prior to that, his junior and senior residency was done at SGPGI College, Lucknow, and he did his MBBS from KGMC Lucknow. So Dr. Pandey has widely published. He has more than 60 national and international journals in high impact index, high impact journals. He's a reviewer of different journals like Transfusion and Apheresis Science, Journal of Clinical Apheresis, Blood Transfusion, AJTS, Therapeutic Apheresis and Dialysis, etc. He's a Six Sigma Black Belt holder. He's an NABH hospital assessor from Quality Council of India, and he has been assessing a lot of hospitals, more than 20 hospitals till now. He is a recipient of HD Shorey Travel Fellowship Award from ISBTI 2010 and the Best Paper Award 2013 and 15 from ISTM, Best Oral Paper from ASFA Texas, US in 2020. He is a life member of all the important societies, both nationally and internationally, like ISBTI, ISTM, AABB, ISHI, ASHI, ISBT. He's also co-convener of Special Interest Group on Therapeutic Apheresis from Indian Society of Transfusion Medicine. And his area of interest is on immunohematology, therapeutic apheresis, transplant immunology, flow cytometry, and academic research and publication. As I talk about him, as I talk about Dr. Pandey, I can see that because of some technical challenges, he's not able to connect. Possibly in due course of time, he'll be able to join us. In the meantime, let me request Dr. Divya Setia from his team to kindly take forward this session from here on. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you.
Divya.
I welcome you all to this session, which is about discussing the pre-transfusion compatibility testing procedures. Pre-transfusion compatibility testing is performed to prevent transfusion of incompatible components to patients to avoid hemolytic reactions. And it is just not about cross-match only. It includes a series of testing procedures and processes that with the ultimate objective of ensuring the best possible results of a blood transfusion. An important aspect of this is patient identification, and Ravi sir will talk about it. So I would like to invite Ravi sir. Ravi sir needs no introduction. He has been a mentor to most of us. It is such a privilege to be able to introduce him. He did his MD and DNB in transfusion medicine. He did his MD in transfusion medicine from PGI Chandigarh. And then he worked at Medanta, the Medicity, Gurgaon for 3 years. Currently, sir is head of the department at Manipal Hospitals, Jaipur. And sir has received the prestigious Harold Gunson Fellowship from ISBT not once, but twice. He has numerous national and international publications. Any amount of words of appreciation will fall short of his praise. I would like to invite sir to start the presentation.
Thank you, Divya. I will not waste any time more. I'll start my presentation. I think so. My slides are visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, fine. I will start then. The topic is pre-transfusion compatibility testing. It's perfectly said here because cross-match is not enough. Actually, it's not enough. But frankly speaking, many blood banks in India, we do only cross-match. We are totally dependent on only cross-match only. Let's see how can I help you today. The purpose of the pre-transfusion testing is to prevent the hemolytic transfusion reactions resulting from the transfusion of ABO mismatch RBC or the RBCs bearing antigens to which the recipient has been sensitized and as a form of potentially clinically significant autoantibody. We want to provide a blood component to a patient that will provide a maximum benefit to the patient. We have to choose the most appropriate blood product from a safe, compatible donor and infuse it in a properly identified and thoroughly tested recipient. See, my wordings are, it's a properly identified and thoroughly tested recipient, and a donor is a safe and a compatible donor. That's why our aim is to give a most appropriate blood product from this. Now, what is the process of pre-transfusion testing? It's a snapshot of actually my presentation. You can see in a donor what we do. In a donor we should do ABO blood group and RHD. We should test for the weak D testing also and plus antibody screening. We do infectious disease screening and TTD testing. Just here we will not cover this in our presentation. We will reconfirm a donor ABO and RHD at the time of the issue of the blood. In donors we do this testing, and in patient we first of all we collect a proper specimen collection. Then in a testing part, the patient testing again ABO blood group and RHD, but no weak D testing here. Why not? We will cover in the presentation. Antibody screening we will do. Then if there is antibody screening is positive, if antibody is positive, we'll go for antibody identification and the corresponding. Then we will check the records also for the patients for the ABO patient records, previous records for the ABO and RHD, RH status, and for the antibody screening status also. Coming to both, when you're doing this is a part of the patient and donor. While both, we will select the components accordingly, compatibility between donor and the patient. We'll check the compatibility check. We will label the all the blood components with the patient information and donor information, and we will issue the product. This is a mapping, a process map for pre-transfusion testing. Now, what are the pre-transfusion testing components? We can see a donor evaluation, patient evaluation, and donor-patient both evaluation. Donor, we will test the donor sample. Patient, we obtain the patient sample, we'll test the patient sample, we'll check the previous records. While in both, we'll select the components, we'll check for the compatibility, and we will label and final records check will be done. Now coming to one by one, first of all, we'll start with to test the donor sample. See, this is a part of a donor evaluation now. We'll do four things here. We'll do ABO grouping, which includes red cell and serum grouping, the forward and reverse grouping. In RHD type, if the donor tests negative, we should test for the donor for the weak D test is required. Now, what is weak D? Why weak D is required? See, there is a variant of D antigen where truly D positive individual test is D negative or very weakly positive on initial D testing. That we label as weak D then. Actually, on what we use normally on the testing by anti-sera anti-D is either monoclonal or polyclonal. If we are getting a weakly positive or even a D negative, we should test for a weak D. Why? There is a theoretical risk that these donors, if we call as D negative, could expose this, and when we transfuse this D negative back to a D negative recipients, they can easily sufficiently go for an anti-D formation in that recipients. So that's why weak D testing is very simple. It's like just an indirect antiglobulin test. What you have to do? You have to test. You want a polyclonal IgG or IgM anti-sera anti-D. You have to just mix with the Rh negative sample red cells, and then go for an incubation, then washing, then AHG phase, addition of AHG. It's a simple indirect antiglobulin test. If it is positive, then it's called as a weak D positive, and we will label the donor as RHD positive, not RHD negative here. Third thing we have to do in donor is antibody detection. All donated units should be screened for unexpected antibodies. Now, what if antibody is present? as we are doing component preparation, the RBCs can be transfused, but frankly speaking, only few hospitals will accept this unit, so they are often discarded. While plasma and platelets are not transfused due to large amounts of the plasma, then in the blood products, that's why, and they are having antibodies in that. That's why they are not being transfused. They are being used. They are being kept reserved or being discarded. The fourth, where you have to go for an infectious disease screening, which is mandatory in India for HIV, HBV, HCV, malaria, and syphilis. This is a part of donor evaluation. Only four things: TB of blood grouping, RHD typing. Important is here is antibody detection is important for unexpected antibodies and infectious disease screening. I think so. Maximum of the blood banks are doing only ABO and RH and infectious disease screening, but maximum blood banks are not doing antibody identification in donor. It's preferable to do donor antibody screening also. Now coming to next part, patient evaluation. The first step is obtain patient sample. See, in obtaining patient sample, what is the procedure for collection? The important is the identification and labeling process is very critical here. The training and attention to detail should be there to avoid errors in collection. There's a term called as wrong blood in tube, it's WBIT. It means the blood in the tube is not from the person on the label. You have collected the sample from one patient and there is a labeling of the another patient on that tube. That's why it's called as wrong blood in tube. And what's the risk estimated here is? Risk estimated is 1 in 2000 samples. It happens like this on the wrong blood in tube. What will happen? It is a potentially catastrophic because everything could be done perfectly in the blood bank and disaster could happen anyway. And I'm sharing you that the rates of WBIT in some selected studies. You can see here in UK, 27 hospitals, they rate around, they got samples like this 1 in 1300. Internationally, 10 countries, 71, 1986, 1 in 1986, 1 in 2500 samples. USA 2083, 2700, 6000, 34, 35,000, 3500, 2200. But you can see in a busy working blood bank of big hospitals of India, I think so it's 2500 samples a monthly consumption or monthly requirement of the patients. You can see one case per month is WBIT is there minimum. And what are the nature? You can see there are some cases, examples of WBIT events are there. I am not going in detail. I am just giving you one, two. Say the type of error is 2 errors result in WBIT and incompatible transfusion. What was happened here? See, a pre-registration house physician sent the 2 samples from a single venipuncture. They sent 2 samples, but it was from single venipuncture as they were independent, but not understanding the rationale behind the group check policy. Ideally, we should want the 2 samples from 2 different events. It should be ideally collected by 2 different persons, or it should be collected at 2 different events. But he has done by single venipuncture only. That's why there was a error. It was a WBIT and incompatible transfusion happened there. Second, one error results in 2 WBIT events. One was a near miss, another results in ABO incompatible transfusion. Why? Here 2 patients were sampled at the same time. See, never ever labeling, you should allow the labeling of sample at the same time of both 2 patients or 3 patients. It should be 1 by 1 only. What are the steps for accurate specimen collection? You should generate a request initially, blood request. It may be an electronic or handwritten or anything. The identification of patient by evaluating the wristband, if possible. Ask the patient to identify himself, like spell the name or recite the date of birth. If wristband has been removed, staff must apply a new one. In operative settings like OT settings, the wristbands are sometimes removed and placed on the chart of the patient chart or tapped on the nearby IV pole or on a table also. But I think so it is actually a suboptimal, it should not be done. But okay, if you're an SOP of this and if it is performing in uniform manner, it can be acceptable. But you should be, the person involved in this should be extra vigilance at the time of specimen collection and transfusion also for this. It may lead to an error. It may be an example, creating example of WBIT here also. Third is a compare wristband and stated identifying information to each other at a time and to the requisition. Fourth is a drawing the required sample into an unlabeled tube. See, frankly, it is unlabeled tubes. Sample can be either serum in a red top or a plasma. It depends on what technology the facility is doing, and the labeling of tubes at the patient side. Why I'm just sharing you what are the do and don'ts of the patient labeling. Do label the tube with at least 2 identifiers. Minimum 2 identifiers. We want a name or unique UHID. It's a unique hospital ID number or a date of birth and a date of collection. It means at least we want from this 3, we want at least 2 identifiers on the tube and date of collection. This technique will vary by facility. It depends. Some facilities use a pre-printed labels. Some use printed labels everywhere, but at least for a blood bank, they want the handwritten labels. Whatever technique is used, you make sure that everything matches. Do always ensure that the phlebotomist is identified on the tube, at least on tube or not on, at least on requisition or in a computer system, whatever so it is. But it should be the phlebotomist is identified who has collected, who has labeled the sample. It is very important for identification of the phlebotomist identification is very important. Do compare the information with that of the requisition. What requisition you are generated. What are the don'ts? Don't pre-label the tubes before collection. Don't label the tubes back at the nursing station. It should be done adjoining to the patient only. Don't try to correct the errors in writing out the information. Start over with the new label. If there is a problem in the labeling, start over with the new labeling. Don't cross it or correct it by writing it. Now, sample coming at your blood bank window. What is the check here? The compare the identification information about identifiers I had told you in the previous slide on the tube to that on the requisition. See, no identification labeling errors should be corrected at the blood bank window. I'm showing you one study. What study has done? What I've shown. See, this is a study. You can see incorrectly labeled specimens, the rejected samples were tested for ABO and RH type, and routine antibody screens were performed. Now, what test results were compared to historic patient data or patient data obtained from subsequently submitted correctly labeled specimens. You can see results where specimens that failed, that rejected to meet the criteria for specimen acceptance were 40 times more likely to have blood grouping discrepancy. 40 times. See, it's a highly risky, as in blood banking, in patient identification is very important, as if there is an error, the patient may, we can issue the wrong blood, we can issue, and there may be a death of the patient also. That's why it's very, very important not to receive, not to entertain any labeling error at the blood bank. Ensure your requisition has required information like what is needed, which component is needed, when it is needed, who is the ordering provider, and what modifications they need to that blood product like leukoreduction or irradiation or any washing if anything they require. This information should be mentioned in the requisition. Well, now coming to timing and sample expiration. See, it is like if the patient is transfused or pregnant within the last 3 months, or if history is not known to us, maximum time it happens like that, we don't know any history of the patient. In these patients, a blood sample is considered predictive for a limited time. What is the limited time? Is the maximum, actually you can say a limited time. Why it is important? That the patients may be in a process of developing a new antibody or stronger antibodies against potentially transfused RBC antigens. So that's why, what is this limited time? This sample, that's why we want always a new sample for this type of patients, for compatibility testing, for cross-matching, for antibody screening every 3 days. Now, how to calculate this 3 days? This is an example. Suppose you have drawn the sample on Sunday at 1 p.m. We will consider as day 0 this. On Monday, we can use this sample. Tuesday, we can use this sample. Wednesday at midnight, day 3, this sample will expire. We want a new sample for Thursday. If we have issued 1 unit in between this with the existing sample, we want a fresh sample on Thursday for the issuing of 2nd unit. Fine. Now, if the patient is transfused in last 3 months, we want the fresh sample every 3 days. But if we have patient not transfused, we know exact history, not pregnant within last 3 months, there is no upper limit for how long a specimen may be used. Many of these facilities, it is documented, they use as long as 30 to 45 days. It is allowed, but it depends facility to facility. That's why many choose only use 3 days, regardless of ease and consistency. They make a fixed rule, only 3 days. After 3 days, the sample will be changed. but you have to retain the sample for 7 days after transfusion. See, here is the catch: after transfusion. For example, you got the request today, but you have issued the blood bag after 2 days. That's why the 7 days will be counted after the issue of the bag, not from the today onwards after when you have cross-matched. Now, what is the evaluating the sample integrity? Important is where when we use serum, when we use plasma. See, most labs use tube testing. When they which are using tube testing, that call conventional tube testing, they prefer to use serum. They want the red top sample, serum clotted samples. Many of them use many of the facilities use tubeless testings like gel or solid phase. They prefer plasma. Why plasma? Because they don't want the debris interference which occurs in clotted samples because of incomplete clotting. But however, these plasma samples can inhibit or weaken the detection of certain antibodies. Example is there is a complement dependent antibody like KID. KID is a very common antibody. It's also a significant antibody, and the plasma samples can weak or inhibit the detection of these antibodies because of calcium inhibition of the complement fixation. Second is a hemolysis. See, hemolysis in the plasma makes it impossible to rule out in vitro hemolytic activity. Already hemolyzed samples, when we are dealing with already hemolyzed samples, when we are doing cross matching or when in antibody screening, if there is a hemolysis, it will be a confusion because hemolysis is pre in the patient or because of in vitro hemolytic antibody activity. So that's why hemolyzed samples should not be entertained. It should be the sample should be repeated. Now there's a lipemia. Again, it will interfere with detection of hemolysis in serum plasma. The same may interfere with automated testing platforms also for tubeless testing. In SPRC, I think so it creates a problem, like lipemia samples creates a problems. Now coming to next, we have covered this time the patient sample, obtaining patient sample. Now next part is the testing of the sample. We have received the sample in the blood bank. Now we will test the sample as a part of a pre-transfusion testing. So how we test, what testing we do, we perform on this patient sample. We do first EBO grouping. Again, it's a forward and reverse grouping is required with resolution of discrepancies, if any. Then RHD typing. It's a simple immediate spin typing routinely we do with the monoclonal polyclonal anti-D. We will avoid weak D testing here, as if any partial D patients we label as D negative or weak D patient we label as D negative. Why it is like, as this patients should receive D negative blood, so they don't form anti-D. That's why we will avoid doing D testing. While in donor we should do D testing, we should focus on the D testing, weak D testing, not D testing, weak D testing. While in patient, we should avoid weak D testing. We should not do the weak D or DU testing. It's routinely called as DU also. In most important thing in the patient sample testing is antibody detection. Like antibody screening is very important. You have to test the patient serum with the RBCs from 2 or 3 or 4. It depends which 3-cell panel or 4-cell panel or 2-cell panel you are having from group O individuals. You should do this thing testing on the AHG phase, at least in 37° and immediate screen is not required. Most important is AHG phase for the antibody screening, as we are concerned with the identification of the clinically significant antibodies. What cells we are using, they should have antigens required on the reagent RBCs for the antibody screening. These are the all cells. These are clinically significant from D, Duffy, KID, Kell, Lewis, MNS, and P. If screen is positive, you must identify the antibody, which antibody is creating a problem. If antibody is significant, clinically significant, what do you mean by clinically significant? It's if it is acting at 37°C, that's we call as a clinically significant antibody. We must provide them antigen negative blood. Now, this is a paper published from the North India, from the Medanta only, from the Dr. Asim and Dr. Prashant. He is a moderator for today's session. You can see what their results are there. The cumulative incidence of irregular antibodies among the patients and donors were 0.12 to 0.009%. In patients is 0.12% and in donors is 0.009%. It's very rare. It's not that common. They also told that the incidence of irregular antibody in patient is 0.12 or slightly lower than the published reports. Of course, it is very lower, but they are It may be because of the fact that patient population studied largely of the surgical patients, as Medanta is mainly surgical driven hospital, not a multi-transfused patients. There's another study from again from North India. You can see here it is the multi-transfused or transfused patient immunization rate was reported. It was there. The incidence was 3.4%. You can see 18 patients having 531. From 531, 18 patients were immunized already. It is very high, 3.4%. So that's why in patient testing, I am just repeating ABO grouping, RSG typing with no weak D testing. Then important is patient identification. Identification and antibody screening of the patient is very important. Now, coming to third part of the patient evaluation, they check the previous records. Now, what we should check in the records? We should check the previous ABO-RH type. We should compare that previous records for at least last 12 months. We should document that you have checked the records, at least in manually or electronically. Anywhere you should document that you have checked the records. If there is no previous results, you should repeat some same sample, or many facilities require a second draw of full repeat testing required. Like in my facility, I want the 2 samples to be there. One should be of the blood grouping and one I want should be on cross match, at least for cross match. So at least 2 samples should be required before giving any blood for transfusion. Second, history of any clinically significant RBC antibodies. If there is a history, the patient have any anti-D or any CAL antibody or anything, you should check for that. There is a history of any clinically significant RBC antibodies. There is not. Why? Many antibodies disappear over time, like 1/3 after 1 year, half of them maybe after 10 years. But you should always honor a history of clinically significant antibodies, regardless of whether it is present right now. See, many times it is non-detectable by our test, but the antibody still remains in the patient. When we give blood to them, they may cause hemolytic transfusion reaction. That's why we should always honor history of clinically significant antibodies. Suppose if patient has history of anti-CAL antibody, while you are doing antibody screening, it's negative. You should give CAL negative blood that patient. It will create a problem. It may cause an hemolytic transfusion reaction in your patient. Third, history of difficult compatibility testing or blood grouping, history of transfusion reactions, history of previous patient interventions, like whether you have issued any wash blood unit to that patient or irradiated blood unit to that patient. You have to check these records and give compatible units correspondingly, respectively. Now, coming to both patient and donor evaluation, the part is a select the component selection. Now, the component selection depends on based on the physician requirement, what the requirement of the physician is, blood bank serologic testing, and the check of historical records. See, ABO compatibility. This is a table from I taken from the ABB only. You can see a whole blood. The requirement should be ABO identical to the recipient. For the red cells, it should be ABO compatible with the recipient plasma. Similarly, for granulocytes, it's ABO compatible with recipient plasma. For FFP, ABO compatible with recipient RBC. RBC is important now. While for the platelets, ABO identical is preferred, but it's not. Many facilities use across the group. Even I practice across the group platelets, no problem. But it is recommended as ABO identical is preferred. Avoid group O to non-group O recipients when possible, especially in young and smaller recipients. Cryoprecipitate, no need of ABO compatibility. All ABO types are acceptable. This is ABO compatibility. Coming to RH compatibility. See, for the RBC products, this slide is for RBC products. D negative premenopausal females should receive D negative RBCs, granulocytes, whole blood, unless in dire circumstances. For all D negative females, premenopausal females should receive D negative to D negative RBCs, granulocytes, whole blood. While D negative males and older females, this after menopause, older females may receive D positive RBC. They can receive D positive RBC whenever necessary, like in trauma time or massive transfusion or transplant, unless they don't have anti-D. If they have no anti-D, we can transfuse them D positive blood. What happens? There is a formation, there is a risk of anti-D formation in this setting, and it has been seen it is very less than thought previously. In previous studies, it was seen that the 80% of the patients will form anti-D, but current studies, there are many studies now, They told that they are reported as 22% of the hospital patients receive form NTD after receiving D positive RBC transfusion. It means from 100 patients receiving D positive transfusion, they were D negative actually, blood group as O negative, for example, and received O positive blood, and they form from 100 patients, only 22 patients form NTD. This one data from the Dr. Prashant and Dr. Divya here today. It is unpublished data. I have presented here with their permission only. What they have done the study is already under process of publication. It was the aim of the study was to prospectively evaluate the rate of alloimmunization after transfusion of D positive red cells in D negative individuals, and to assess delay in transfusion due to unnecessary time taken decision making. You can see what they have done. It's a 4-year study from 14 to 18. All patients were followed for a period of 3 months, and they are tested for antibody screening for the formation of any alloantibody like NTD or any other, and that. And in addition, the patient were followed for 6 months and 1 year to monitor delayed development of NTD also. What they have reported results are total 57 negative patients who received mean of 4 to 6, 4 plus minus 2, 6, 2 to 4, 2 to 6, I can say transfusions range of 2 to 6. 52 males and 5 females were there from the patients. NTD was detected in 7 cases only 7 cases. There the percentage came out to be 12.3%. It is much lesser than even 22. This is an even Indian data only, you can see, but it is unpublished. Coming to a platelet, for the platelets, it's the same general rules as above, though the risk is considerably less. Here the older reports suggest reports that as high as 19% incidence of NTD in D negative patients receiving D positive platelet products. It means like O positive receiving O negative receiving O positive platelets, or B negative receiving B positive platelets. They were reported like 19% incidence of formation of NTD. While recent 10-year study, over 1,000 patients they analyzed, they have shown that only 3.8% incidence of formation of NTD was there. There was a data published by my study only when I was in Medanta. It was we published this study from Medanta. It was a 5-year data in around 332 D negative patients who received around 2,000 D positive platelet transfusion were analyzed. You can see median follow-up was 7 weeks, and what their NTD was detected in only 3 D negative patients. From 300, only 3 D negative patients NTD was formed. It was only 0.9%. So I think so you can easily transfuse, but yeah, something to be remembered. Consider using prophylactic RHIG to prevent immunization when giving D positive platelets to D negative premenopausal females. When you're dealing with females, negative patients giving positive platelets, please consider giving RHIG to prevent immunization. Now, coming to FFP or plasma products or cryo, not necessary to mention for RHD. This is a compatibility selection for the patients. Antigen negative red cell components for significant antibody, we have to issue antigen negative red cell components. It needs rare anti-serums. You have to need the help of nearest IH referral centers. There are many IH referral centers in India also. There are good centers in every, I think so, state is there. They are helping them. Smaller blood banks. And the calculations for finding antigen negative unit you should be aware about these things to easily identify the bags, and you can at least tell your consultants or your physician what time it will be needed to provide you compatible blood unit. For this you should be aware about the calculations for finding antigen negative units. There are molecular techniques growing, use is growing now, but you still need an anti-sera for confirmations for giving antigen negative red cell components. Coming to next component is a check for the compatibility in pre-transfusion testing. The cross match, it is called as compatibility is called as cross match, is used to determine the compatibility between donor and patient. See, when we say cross match, we usually mean major cross match. It means we want to show the compatibility between the recipient serum. We are interested in serum of the recipient and the donor RBC. It means recipient antibody and donor antigens. So that it's called as a major cross match. In particular, the main reason to do a cross match is ensure ABO compatibility. We are mainly focused with ABO. We don't focus on RH, and we don't focus on any other blood group system also. We are mainly focused on ABO or compatibility because while doing cross match. Added benefit are for doing cross match may detect antibody for lower incident antigen not present on the screening cells but present on donor cells. It's very rare, but it can happen. It's an added benefit. Also help to detect incompatibility when antibody screen is performed incorrectly or not performed. That at that time the cross match will help you to detect incompatibility. Rest the cross match is very limited. That's why we don't need only cross match. We want the screen also, antibody screening to be done for the patient also. Cross match, when we'll do, we have to do cross match before transfusion of any blood product contains at least 2 ml of RBC. It means we want to do cross match for whole blood, for red cells, for granulocyte, but we don't need cross match for FFP, platelet or cryo. See, there is an asterisk with the platelet unless heavily contaminated with RBC. If your platelets are contaminated with RBC, at least in heavily, that is at least they're having 2 ml of RBCs, so they should need a cross match. But normally, routinely, we don't need cross match of platelets, plasma, and the cryoprecipitate. Frank, again, I am talking cross match here means major cross match. Many of your institutes maybe are doing minor cross matches. You can continue doing, no problem at that. Now, cross match. There are 3 types of cross match: serologic AHG cross match, immediate spin cross match, electronic computer cross match. What is AHG? It's a full cross match. Many of the facilities are doing AHG cross match with the help of Nissen gel. Some may use PEG albumin saline, and some of you are using AHG cross match, doing AHG cross match with the help of solid phase technology, SPRCA. AHG cross match is must required when there is a patient having clinically significant RBC antibodies. AHG phase detects RBC coated with antibodies. Second is an immediate spin cross match. You can see it's a definition says it's only performed if antibody screen is negative. It's abbreviated cross match. If antibody screen is negative, then only we can say perform immediate spin cross match, and there is no history of significant RBC antibodies. It's actually simply a final ABO compatibility check. It's only ABO compatibility check by doing immediate spin cross match. Why we are doing this then? It saves time and reagents. It decreases the workload for your transfusion service workers. It demonstrated to be safe, like only 0.1% risk of acute hemolysis. This rate is actually similar when you're doing AHG cross match, provided you are doing along with the antibody screen. When you're doing immediate spin cross match along with antibody screen of the patients, it is equivalent to doing AHG cross match. Electronic computer cross match, like immediate spin cross match, may only be used when current antibody screen is negative and there is no significant history of any significant RBC antibodies. It's like similar immediate spin cross match. Again, why we are using this? Again, it is potential to save a lot of time, even more than immediate spin. Even it is faster than immediate spin cross match. At least immediate spin cross match may need you 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 5 minutes. It depends what manufacturer you are using. But computer cross match, it saves you lots of time. It decreases your workload and reagent cost in transfusion service. And again, no significant difference in safety. What are the requirements for computer cross match? First of all, the most important, it should be, see, it is not allowed in India, first of all. Second, it is where it is allowed, should be approved. There is a FDA approved, locally validated computer system capable of making logical judgments of ABO compatible donor and patients. And it is only used when antibody screen of the donor and the recipient is negative. Patient who has 2 separate ABO determinations, including one for this present transfusion episode. There are 3 acceptable criteria, like historical ABO type and current ABO. No historical ABO, at least this sample should be tested twice for ABO. No historical ABO type, test current sample ABO type and require second sample from the second phlebotomy. At least they want the 2 ABO type confirmation along with a locally validated computer system, along with antibody screening negative for the donor and patient, then only we can proceed for computer cross match. This is in flow chart how it is work. You can see a properly labeled specimen from recipient received at the blood bank. We will do ABO-RH typing and antibody screen. If it is negative, we can proceed for computer cross match issue RBC. If it is positive, the computer cross match cannot be done, cannot be used because of antibody presence. And clinically significant, we have to identify antigen negative compatible RBC. We have to perform serological cross match with negative RBC. and we can give ABO compatible RBC and recipients plasma, and we can issue the RBC. Now, what are the issues with positive cross match? See, there are some issues like when you get your antibody screen is negative, but you are getting a positive cross match. Here, why it is positive image screen phase. Here, your ABO RBCs are not ABO compatible. You are dealing with ABO incompatible with recipient antibodies. Second, maybe because of anti-A1 antibody in A2 or other subgroup of A patient. Maybe because of the cold reactive antibodies, or maybe because of the polyagglutinable donor RBCs. This all can be detected by image screen cross-match only. Sometimes it happens like your antibody screen is negative, but you are getting positive AHG cross-match. It may be because of the antibody against low frequency antigen, which is not present on the antibody screening cells, while it was present luckily on the donor RBC, and false negative antibody screen or wrongly conducted antibody screen. Donor RBC is coated with antibody or complement, you can see a positive DAT. When your RBC donor is DAT positive, then also you will get an AHG cross-match positive along with a negative antibody screen. Next is positive cross-match after positive antibody screen. It may be because of autocontrol, it may be warm autoantibody or cold autoantibody, or it may be antibody against recently transfused RBC antigens or alloantibody passive acquired autoantibodies. When your autocontrol is negative, you are dealing with expected with high frequency antigen antibody. And if you selected the unit as antigen negative, still you are having positive cross match, then it is incorrectly performed, incorrectly identified, or antibody against low frequency antigen or donor. These are only possibilities while if you are selected already antigen negative blood and still your cross match is coming positive. Now, final is the label, final records check. Component labeling. The components, when you are issuing that components, must have a tag or a label affix that includes the recipient to independent identifiers. I already told you what identifiers we are interested more. Donor unit number, results of your compatibility testing. While there are other information will already be on the standard label, but I am naming a few like component name, ABO RH type, expiration date, storage temperature, facility, instructions, approximate volume, anything. These you can even use an ISBT 128 labeling pattern. This is an example for that. Final clerical shell as per IBB standard 27 edition at issue and at bedside. At issue, what you want to check: recipient, two independent identifiers, ABO and RH, donor product, donor ID, donor blood group, compatibility testing results, special requirements, issue date, expiration date. At a bedside, similar things. Why? Same thing. You have to train your nursing staff, you train your physicians, you train your clinicians to check all these things at the bedside before transfusion as a final clerical check. Now, in short, coming to what are the different order types. One is a hold clot, one is type and hold, one is type and screen, one is type and cross. What is hold clot? It is uncommonly used. Clotted samples held in transfusion service but not being tested. Again, type and hold, again uncommonly used. They are doing only ABO RH typing here, but no other testing, no identification of the antibodies. Commonly used are type and screen. It should be most common pre-transfusion order. It should be there. And it's check the previous records for comparison with current results. You do ABO RH typing, you do antibody identification. If the antibody is positive, you should do identification here. It is very simple to convert from type and screen to type and cross if necessary. If antibody screen is negative, only an ABO check is required. Like if your antibody screen is negative, you can proceed with image screen cross match or proceed with computer cross match, but not allowed in India. You have to do at least image screen cross match in India. If antibody screen is positive, you have to identify which antibody is there, and corresponding antigen negative blood should be issued by doing AHG cross match also, no problem. Now, what is type and cross match? Similarly, it's type and screen, but here adds the cross matching of specific number of RBC. RBC units are then designated for that patient. What should be the effective strategy? Is a maximize. We should do type and screen and issue by doing ABO compatibility by immediate spin cross match, and minimize type and cross match whenever possible. See, this is again a first Indian study to establish the safety of immediate spin cross match for red cell transfusion antibody screen patients. Again published by my team from Medanta. You can see what we have done. It was a longitudinal study conducted over 5,000 RBC units transfused to antibody screen negative patients admitted to hospital. This pre-transfusion testing, what is the blood grouping and antibody screening, followed by immediate screen cross-match were done, and at the time of the issue of red cell unit, these patients were transfused immediate screen compatible red cell units. AHG cross-match was performed post-transfusion for all red cell units. Any incompatible AHG cross-match was followed by a suspected transfusion reaction. See, we have transfused around 5,023 red cell units to 2,400 patients with negative antibody screening. 99.7% immediate screen compatible red cell units were also compatible on post-transfusion AHG cross-match. What we identified in two units where NTP alloantibody was missed on antibody screening, while it came positive while doing cross-match. But there was no reaction, no clinically sign or serological sign of hemolysis was identified in a patient. To summarize, if antibody screen negative, ABO check only needed, immediate screen or electronic cross-match. If antibody screen positive, you can automatically convert this to type and screen and after antibody identification. For antibody identification, effective strategy again, maximize type and screen, minimize type and cross-match whenever possible. There are some variations to this policies, like in babies less than 4 months. In blood banking, we call the newborn as definition is less than 4 months. Like baby is equals to mom. Check baby for ABO and RH, mom for antibody screen. There is no need of any serum grouping for the babies less than 4 months, and you should do cross match with the mom. There are variations. To just complete my presentation, I also included 2 slides on MS-BOSS. Last 2 slides are there. This is a maximum. What is MS-BOSS? It's a maximum surgical blood ordering schedule. It is a hospital-specific guide actually to appropriate routine ordering quantities for the specific procedures. They are generally a list of surgical and other procedures followed by recommended blood order for that procedure. So what are the orders? Maybe none. Like some appendicitis patient surgery, they doesn't need any blood unit, so they should label this none. Type and screen or type and cross match for number of units. So why it's important? It will help you to conserve resources and promotes consistency in your procedures, in your working, and must be formally approved by with maximum number of physicians involved in this and promoted widely to be effective. I am giving examples here. Like see here, it is a CTVS surgery. You can see 2 units for aortic aneurysm, heart transplant is 6 units, CABG it's 2 units, thoracic surgery, esophagectomy 2 units. You can see in obs and gynae, all obs-GYN patients type and screen only. Cesarean section type and screen, DNE type and screen. Hysterectomy they want 4 units. Plastic diacrita with low suspicion 4 units, while high they want MTP pack more than 10 units. General surgery, you can see simple gastrectomy type and screen, open liver biopsy type and screen, lobectomy 1 to 2 units. In neurosurgery, craniotomy type and screen, non type and screen. These are some example of MS-BOSS. Thank you. Any questions, please?
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for this enlightening presentation. It was stimulating and very comprehensive, and I'm sure this presentation will benefit the knowledge and expertise of all participants. As correctly mentioned, pre-transfusion testing is a multi-step process. It begins in the clinical ward with identification of the intended recipient and collection of a properly labeled blood sample. And when this sample and requisition is received in the transfusion laboratory, the personnel attending in the blood bank should review the recipient's transfusion history, perform the necessary testing, and issue the most suitable unit. Proceedings to the Zoom poll answers. I would like to invite Sir to proceed with the Zoom poll questions.
Sir,
Yeah, hi Divya. To me?
yes, sir.
Yeah. The first question was, you have just received a sample, a request and sample for pre-transfusion testing. What is the most important thing to do first? Options were: check the records of the prior type and screen results of the patient, perform ABO-RH typing, complete the cross-match, perform an indirect antiglobulin test to see if the patient has any irregular antibodies. Of course, we'll go with the audience. Right answer: check the records of the prior type and screen results of the patient before doing for anything else. We should check the records of the patient. Next, WBIT can occur due to incorrect registration, failure to use positive patient identification, labeling the specimens away from the patient. Yes, these are all are the right answers, all of the above. These all are responsible for the wrong blood in tube. There is an grouping here, an ABO type of the patient. Forward, you are seeing a patient is AB, it's A, and reverse, you see it's A cells are giving an extra reaction 2+, B cells is negative, O cells are negative. We got an extra reaction in reverse. It may be because of it's AB, of course, with A to B. It clearly indicates it's A to B with anti-A1. For confirmation of this, we should put an anti-A1 lactin for the forward. And for anti-A1, we can confirm with using A2 cells in the reverse group. Or we can treat the patient serum with A2 cells. If it is negative with A2 cells, it is clear-cut anti-A1 antibody. The answer is B, A2B with anti-A1. Next. For computer cross-match, I told you all criteria. Yeah, it is. The recipients as well as the donor ABO-RH has been confirmed and entered in a computer. There should be no clinically significant antibody detected in current blood sample of the recipient, and there should be no record of the same in past. Critical elements of the information system have been validated on site. All of the above. It's all must needed for proceeding for a computer cross match. Patient has developed an anti-KIT A antibody 5 years ago. Antibody screen is currently negative. Fine. To obtain suitable blood for transfusion, which procedure should apply? Always remember, when there is an antibody, already we are knowing antibody 5 years ago, we should give them antigen negative blood. We should proceed like we first find donor units with KIT A antigen negative, then cross match negative. Like that's why the C is the right answer. Type the donor units for KIT A antigen, then cross match KIT A negative units in the patient's serum. Which of the following methods may be employed to remove IgG antibodies from the coating of patient red cells? It means the patient is DAT positive. We should do an elution. What is an elution? Elution is removing of antibodies from the coated red cells. Adsorption is you can see adsorbing or attaching the RBCs to the antibodies to the red cells. Neutralization is antigen antibody reaction without presence of red cells. It's called as neutralization. Titration is a different thing. So that's why your answer is elution here. Blood donor and recipient samples used in a cross match must be stored for minimum how many days following transfusion? I explained in my slide, it's 7 days from the day of transfusion, day of issue from your blood bank. Is C, answer is C, 7 days. What is true about maximum surgical blood ordering schedule? See here, the goal is to establish realistic blood ordering levels for certain procedures. Yes. And CT ratio should be less than 2. What is CT ratio? It's a cross match to transfusion ratio. It should be always less than 2. Ideal should be 1, but it should be less than 2. And most appropriate use of blood stock with less wastage and reduction of cost. That's why it is made the maximum surgical blood ordering schedule. Its answer is all of the above. Fine. All of the following steps for patient identification are correct, except all are correct except first, the accompanying of facility generated recipient ID wristband with the information written on the blood requisition form. Okay. Age, date of birth, address, gender, name of the requesting physician can be used to verify the patient identity. No, we want some identifiers. We want, that's why. This is the right answer. Except. The bedside check to be carried out before transfusion include all except. No need to tally the name, registration, unit number on the blood request form and label on the bag. Without this, you can't proceed. You have to check all this thing. You have to go for a visual inspection of the bag. You not to warm blood in unmonitored water bath or in direct contact with hot water. We should not do anything with the blood. You have to transfuse as intact. No need of any warming of the blood. Record or document the pre-transfusion vitals of the patient and the time of starting the transfusion. You have to record all the pre-transfusion vitals of the patient. Answer is except is A. This you have to tally the name, registration number, unit number before starting any transfusions.
Are we done with the poll questions?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's proceed to the questions asked by the participants. So the first question is asked by Dr. Mohammed Anas Sheikh. A frequent question asked by examiner in Viva: how do you check the adequacy and suitability of samples? Sir?
So see, the adequacy means here the amount of the sample and the type of the sample you need. As I already told you, it depends on what you are using, what method you are using. If you're dealing with tube, you should have with you at least serum. Okay, but when you are using some automated systems or gel, the EDTA sample is better. But of course, there is a problem with the EDTA sample. Like I told you, on complement mediated antibodies like KID, it may be missed because of use of the plasma as use of anticoagulants. That's why it is first of all adequacy, then the volume of the sample. Minimum, it depends on the case, how much you want. Suitability, your sample should not be older than 3 days as a rule. It depends. Minimum only when you don't have any history of don't have any knowledge of history of transfusion or history of pregnancy. So 3 days rule will be there. Second, it should not be hemolyzed. It should not be lactemic, and it should be properly labeled sample also. Identifiers should be there, and the phlebotomist should be at least traceable. At least there should be signature on the sample or on the requisition, or electronically should be there. So that means, I think so, adequacy and suitability of the sample.
Thank you, sir. The next question is by him again. He asks, any difference between unexpected and irregular antibodies?
See, it is the same. Irregular and unexpected are synonymously used terms actually. Unexpected, irregular antibodies, they are the same thing.
Thank you, sir.
We mainly concerned with the other antibodies which are clinically significant. These are all the synonymously used terms for that.
Absolutely, sir. Next is by Dr. Mohammed again. He asks, is there any reference source that you can suggest for MS-BOS?
There are multiple articles are there, multiple review articles are also there. If they want, I can search and I can mail him, no problem with
that. Dr. Mohammed, kindly share your email ID. We'll send across the relevant articles. Next question is by an anonymous attendee. He says, how to overcome problem of identifying and issuing red cells in cases of multiple myeloma and in children with positive Coombs test.
See, now the problem here is what I am understanding. There are two different things. One in case of multiple myeloma. See, in multiple myeloma, commonly the Role formation creates a problem and giving you incompatibility. It causes you grouping discrepancy first before giving any incompatibility. For if I consider it's a Role formation, then it's a separate topic on the discrepancies. You can solve by saline replacement technique. Your problem can be solved if we are dealing with Role, but we have to identify where we are dealing with Role or we are dealing with autoantibodies. So first of all that. Second, your question is children with positive Coombs test. If the patient is positive Coombs test, now the question arises why it is Coombs positive. Coombs positive means there is some antibody attached on your patient RBCs. It may be an allo, it may be an auto. Simultaneously, I want some information on what's the children's age, then what's the, if it is a neonate, then what's the mother antibody screen results. If it is not a neonate, you can say infant or a 4 or 5 years old children, then we want what's autoantibodies are there or not, or any drug induced. There are multiple reasons for the positive Coombs patient, and accordingly you can identify the which antibody is there or which what's problem we are dealing, and we can solve. But all these things need a separate presentations.
Yes, sir. Comprehensively answered. Thank you, sir. Next question is from Romesh Jain, and they have asked that which sample are you using at your hospital during PTT? EDTA or plain vial?
I think so for PTT it's cited well.
Yes, sir. I feel
Sorry, it's a pre-transfusion testing he asking. Okay, at my center I am using EDT and plain both. Okay, it depends, Ramesh, what you are using. If you are for a tube testing, you should use plain samples a minimum. At least plain samples you should need it. For when you are using for the gel or automation or you can say SPRCA, you want a EDTA samples.
Yes, sir. The next question is by Shrikanta, and they have asked that is repetitive or multiple transfusion of fresh frozen plasma safe?
I think so. It's safe. It depends. The frozen plasma should be transfused as per the advice of the clinician. As per the dose, depends on the weight of the patient again. But multiple transfusion, repeated transfusion, the safety. See, FFP is mainly concerned is I think so allergic reactions, anaphylactic reactions, and viral transmission. I can't do anything for allergic and anaphylaxis. It depends on patient to patient and donor to donor. For viral, it's of course it's depend on what testing you are using for the infectious disease screening.
Yes, sir. The next question is by Sena Abdul Salam, and they have asked that in aortic aneurysm cases, what is your opinion of autologous donation in spite of risk of cardiovascular aspect? Regarding MS-BOS, what is the risk?
Frankly, I can't answer this. I think so. He is trying to ask question like, what's the experience in autologous donation in aortic aneurysm cases? I don't have any experience on doing this thing. I have not done any cases. It's not being practiced in my center at least. So sorry, I can't answer this question. But MS-BOS, I showed you one example of MS-BOS for aortic aneurysm. At least 3 or 4 units of blood is required for that. But it's totally different. How autologous is doing there, I don't know.
Yes, sir. The next question is by an anonymous attendee, and they've asked that any specific reason for storage of samples for 7 days specifically? Is it related to the immune response?
Yeah, it is. See, first of all, it's a mandatory requirement as per the law for doing 7 days. But there are some cases where you see the delayed serological transfusion reaction. I'm not talking hemolytic reaction. I'm talking serological transfusion reaction, DSTR. Sometimes it may happen like there's a delayed hemolytic reaction, or you can identify there was a DAD positive in second transfusion. There's a second demand. Then at least you should want to identify, want to confirm whether it is reaction or not. You want the samples stored with you only for recheck of the all testing you have done with the previous sample. That's why at least 7 days storage is required. Some of the facility even store for 10 days, 15 days also.
Thank you, sir. The next question is by Shrikanta, and they have asked how safe is using red cells derived from immortalized cells for blood transfusion?
ये क्या है भाई? Shrikanta, frankly, I don't know. Can you please explain me what is the immortalized cells? I don't know.
Could be a typo error.
I don't
Let's
know.
move
Maybe
to the
let's move to next question. Let's see Shrikanta reply.
Yes, sir. The next question is by Dr. Pankaj Das, and they have asked, can we give least incompatible blood to a patient if he has developed antibody against high prevalence antigen in case we are unable to identify the antibody?
See, Dr. Pankaj, when you are dealing with a high prevalence antigen, it means it is not possible to give you, as the name suggests, high prevalence is more than 90%, 99% of the individuals having that antigen. So it's very, 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 very difficult to find even compatible blood for that patient. So to giving least incompatible, it depends on what type of reaction you are getting. Like if you are getting 1+ type of reaction with any of the bag, and it's an emergency situation where a transfusion is more important to save the life of the patient, I think so you should give, no problem. But it again, it depends to case.
Thank you, sir. Next question is by Shrikanta again. Is a person who has vitiligo acceptable for voluntary blood donation or not?
I think so it's not relevant to our today presentation, but answer is I think so it's acceptable.
Yes, sir. There are no such deferral guidelines given.
for vitiligo.
Yes, sir. Next question is by Sena Abdul Salam, and they've asked, is electronic cross match done in your institute?
No, it's not allowed in India. You can go for an electronic cross match, but simultaneously at least you have to do immediate spin or AHG cross match along with that. But only electronic cross match not allowed in India.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The next question is by Sena again. What is the high prevalence antigen?
It's the antigen which is present in more than 99% of the population. It's called as high incidence or high prevalence antigen.
Yes, sir. Are there any questions?
You can check the chat also.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Somebody has asked, even though platelets don't carry Rh antigen, what will be the explanation for anti-D formation?
See, platelets are two types mainly practiced in India. One is RDPs, one is SDPs. The chances of RH, this red cell contamination in RDPs are much higher than in SDPs. That's why you can see many papers, even in my paper, there was only 3 patients who have developed NTD. They are mainly received RDPs. So with RDP transfusion, the chances of red cell contamination are still there. That's why the platelets anti-D formation may be happened there.
Yes, sir. The next question is by Romesh Jain. They've asked, least incompatible blood can be given for IUT or not if fully compatible is not available?
Romesh, again, patient to patient specific. It's a very high risk for the IUT, as when you are dealing with IUT, it means you are dealing with hydrops. Baby is already at risk. If the blood is only option, and again, blood is an option for that. When you are giving incompatible blood to not only fetus, you are giving to the mother also. It depends case to case. I can't say the correct answer here.
Absolutely, sir. The next question is by Sena. They've asked massive transfusion protocol. Could you, Sena, could you be a little more specific?
It's a broad topic. Transfusion means more than 10 units of your transfusing the patient. It's an activation of your protocol. Whenever a case you have like cardiac surgery or placenta accreta, placenta previa type of cases, when it goes in PPH, so there are chances of going for a massive transfusion. They are defined as more than 10 units of the blood units they are required, RBC units are required. So then we should activate the massive transfusion protocol of our hospital or a transfusion unit. It depends. But it then what to transfuse, how much to transfuse, it all comes under that protocol.
Yes, sir. There is another question by Dr. Saurabh. Saurabh, could you use full forms instead of
Cross match and PRC or platelet and FFP and PLS. What it means. Dr. Saurabh, please rewrite the question. Still, we are answering some questions from chat. Divya, chat.
Yes, sir. There is another question by Sena. He asked, for patients having an irregular antibody, should we start steroids?
I don't think so. There is a need of steroids for this. See, it will there always. It has been seen in 1/3 of the RBC antibodies get non-detectable after 1 year. Some of the half of these antibodies non-detectable after 10 years. I already shown in my presentation. But frankly, these are non-detectable. When you give any hit, like in transfusion, like I give an example to you, like anti-kel, it is non-detectable. But it is recorded in past. There is some report or there is some information available in your HIS that it was positive for anti-kel any thalassemia patient. You should always transfuse that patient kel negative blood only. And steroid, I don't think so. It will much. There is a problem with on irregular antibodies. But yeah, in some cases, like you want to intervene in between and you don't have any option, like there was a question from Dr. Romesh was there, like least incompatible blood given for IUT. Like in that case, when you are not receiving, not getting any compatible blood and your antibody titers are too high, then you can go with help of steroid, with help of IVIG, with help of plasma exchange to reduce the titer of that antibody. Then it will be helpful. Otherwise, in routine, I don't think so.
Yes, sir. Dr. Saurav has replied in passenger lymphocyte syndrome. I feel he's asking about transfusion support in PLS.
Yes, transfusion support in passenger lymphocyte syndrome. Again, it is it is all depends on RBC, platelet, and FFP, the compatible with your both donor and recipient. That's why it is see already there is a passenger lymphocyte syndrome happens there. That's why when we do the transfusions, it should be compatible both recipient and donor. Like O will be the RBC will be the best, and AB positive FFP and platelets will be the best, as they are universal. They can be transfused easily.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The next question is, any centers where platelet cross-matching is done in India?
As per my knowledge, PJ was doing when I was there. There was a study going on in PJ, but I don't know at present they are doing or not. As thesis was over, then might be they have stopped. In second, they might are doing in BLK, BL Kapoor Hospital, Delhi. They might have been doing. No idea.
Thank you so much, sir. Angel Sam has replied to all panelists about the aortic aneurysm question, that intra-cell salvage can be practiced, and you also do acute.
It's ANH, acute normovolumic hemodilution form we do in our center. That's good thing, Angel Sam. That's good. Maybe our CTVS surgeons, I can ask them to practice that also in our in centers also. Thank you for sharing.
Asha has asked, how will you do pre-transfusion testing in premature newborns?
Fine. In premature newborn, see, you are mainly concerned with the newborn. If you newborn sample, you are concerned with their blood group. See, we are only for the forward blood grouping. Even reverse is the no sense of doing reverse. It will give an information about the mother's antibody only, not the baby. So that's why the mother sample is important for cross matching, for antibody screening, and baby sample is only for the forward grouping, nothing else.
Thank you, sir. The next question.
I want to add here, sorry, sorry that I'm interrupting you. If see maximum time it happens, like in our center it happens, many samples come to me for a premature or newborns without samples of mother, as mother is in mother gaon mein hai, bachcha hamare paas hai, blood to dena hai. At that time we don't have any option. What we practice, and ideally should be practiced, you should be able to do the antibody screen from the patient's newborn sample only, do the forward grouping of the baby, and preferably, ideally issue O negative bloods to that patient.
Yes, sir. The next question is by Sena. What about transfusion in RH null and RH mod individuals?
Hey Bhagwan. Sena, I think so. These are theoretical transfusion in RH null and RH mod. We want to identify RH null and RH mod only then first.
Yes, sir. RH null would obviously receive RH null.
Null only.
And the rest is clearly given in your textbook. Next question is from Shrikanta. What is the best and accurate index to determine amount of blood transfusion for acute blood loss?
What is the best and accurate index to determine amount of blood transfusion for acute blood loss? No idea.
This is related to a totally different topic.
Yeah.
We'll come back to it later. The next question is by Sena again. Dose of RHIG administration if more than how many RH positive platelets to RH negative individuals?
See, it is a single dose of 300 micrograms for sufficient for I think so 6 units of RDP if you are transfusing. Okay. Or 1 unit of SDP. Single dose of the anti-D 300 microgram will be sufficient.
Yes, sir. The next question is by Bhuvneshwar.
Blood क्यों होता है? Blood expire क्यों होता है? Blood expire नहीं होगा तो blood hemolyze हो जाएगा. रेड सेल स्टोरेज लीजन्स होते हैं हमारे, एक सेपरेट टॉपिक है इसके ऊपर. काफी स्टोरेज लीजन्स है, इवन एक्सपायर्ड ना भी हो उससे पहले भी काफी स्टोरेज लीजन्स आ जाते हैं. लाइक हाइपरकैलेमिया इन ओल्डर ब्लड, ओल्ड एज ब्लड, वेरी कॉमन. एग्जांपल के तौर पे अगर हम 42 दिन में या 35 डेज में, डिपेंड आप व्हाट एंटीकोगुलेंट सॉल्यूशन यूज कर रहे हैं या एनएडी सॉल्यूशन यूज कर रहे हैं, अगर हम नहीं करेंगे तो हेमोलिसिस के चांसेस काफी बढ़ जाते हैं. ऐसा नहीं है कि इमीडिएटली हो जाता है, सेकेंडली हो जाता है, बट इट हैज बीन सीन कि 42 डेज तक के विद यूज ऑफ एडिटिव सॉल्यूशन ब्लड ट्रांसफ्यूज कर सकते हैं. उसमें 2-3 डीपीजी लेवल्स लिमिट तक ही गिर रहे रहते हैं और वो ट्रांसफ्यूज करने के बाद इमीडिएटली वापस भी आ जाते हैं. तो यू कैन यूज.
The ultimate aim of transfusion is कि आपके ट्रांसफ्यूज सेल्स जो है वो सर्कुलेशन में वो काम करे जिसके लिए वो दिए जा रहे हैं. There are
nice to have a long list of questions. अच्छा लगा. Thank you.
Very interactive session today. I think we are done with the questions. I would like to invite Dr. Arijit to close the session.
Thank you, Dr. Divya. Thank you, Dr. Ravi. For one, the presentation was so comprehensive and it really justified the topic for which we gathered today, is about cross-matching is not enough. Pre-transfusion compatibility testing workup is so important. And we looked at the various areas in terms of donor, in terms of the recipient, and in both situations, what is the framework of going about that compatibility testing. And we, in fact, what I could register was more than 30 questions, different types of questions being answered patiently. Thank you so much, Dr. Ravi, for answering those. Thank you, Dr. Divya, for bringing those up to Dr. Ravi. So I thank all the audience once again for being around. One important thing is that when we send out e-certificates, we try to do it in the next 48 hours. However, the only criteria that we place is that someone should have attended at least for 15 minutes in the session. So that's one criteria that we keep before sending out any certificate. We do have the recordings, so please reach out to us. Purnima, can we have the email address on the screen, so that please
Sure,
write to this email address if you need a copy of the presentation, if you need a copy, if you need a link of the webinar recording. Uh, our next upcoming webinar is on 19th of February, wherein Dr. Shweta Ranjan is going to cover on the guidelines for donor selection, who can and who cannot donate. And we take a closer look at the Drugs and Cosmetics Act 1940 and the amendments that have happened to that, current donor selection criteria with rationale for donor deferral, and then special considerations in the COVID era. So we look at that topic on the 19th of Feb. And so I would request all of you to please join us again on that day for a interactive session as we have done today. So thank you once again to Dr. Ravi, Dr. Divya, to all the panelists, to Team Polymed for bringing it to all the participants, and last but not the least, for all the participants for interacting so very much um, with our esteemed speaker. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ajit. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.